call the meeting to order. This is the special meeting of the Planning Commission. We have one subject this evening, the library. It is the public hearing, and there is another meeting which is scheduled before the Town Council on Monday. Tonight is an opportunity for people to say, to talk to us about their views on the proposal. You have cards in back of each of the rows of seats, and if you want to say something, we would appreciate it. It would help us if you fill it out and give it to the clerk. What we'll be doing this evening is asking for the staff report. Since the town is both the town and also, in essence, the applicant, the town and its consultants will, or the town, will make a presentation. Those who then wish to speak will be given that opportunity, and then, as is always the custom, the applicant will conclude, whereupon we'll close the public hearing. The Planning Commission will then have the ability to discuss it, and we have certain things that we have to approve or not approve, as the case may be. So that being the case, I think all of you are familiar, but I'll just say it again. We are the Planning Commission, not the Town Council. What we can do is more limited than what the Town Council can do. So if anybody wants to speak to us, I would encourage them to keep in mind that we do not make rules, generally speaking, but we tend to, what we're supposed to interpret them. The Town Council can, in fact, has greater freedom in that than we do. So that all having been said, I'd ask for a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Erickson?
Here.
Commissioner Jensen? Here. Commissioner Sayak?
Here.
Commissioner Machici has an excused absence. Commissioner Talasfor?
Here.
Vice Chair Bourgeois?
Here.
And Chair O'Donnell?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. If you would all join me, we'll have a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the next matter we have would be the minutes of December 9th. Do we have any discussion or a motion? Yes, Commissioner Bourgeois.
I move to approve the minutes of December 9th.
Is there a second? Commissioner Erickson?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
My only discussion is I wasn't present at that meeting, but I did review the notes. Can I vote?
You could vote even if you didn't review the notes.
Okay.
All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? No. So it's unanimous with Commissioner Machici being absent. We have, are there any written communications?
None other than what was distributed in your packet.
Okay. We have no requested continuances. I think we have at least one subcommittee report. Commissioner Erickson?
The Historic Preservation Committee met this afternoon and recommended to the Development Review Committee that they approve some minor modifications to the exterior of the property on North Santa Cruz Avenue that has been occupied by Smith & Hawken. Is being proposed to be occupied by Restoration Hardware, and the modifications as proposed met the standards that were of concern. Also, there was the owners of property at 6221 Shannon Road have requested the unusual thing, and that is that their property be added as a historic property, that they have an overlay zone because they have an interest in the property being preserved. So they requested, the action of the committee this afternoon was to recommend to the staff that to encourage, to support that, and for the town to initiate the process, because it will take an overlay zoning change to accomplish that, and the town having an interest in preserving it as a historic property and preserving the structures that are. In fact, the owners did a quite extensive research on the property that it at least would rival what the staff would do in terms of the history. So it was interesting to do that. So the committee recommended that the town go forward, explore the possibility of the town doing that, as opposed to putting the burden of that process on the homeowners. Then there was a discussion about the relocation of the 17 Fiesta Way home, which the Historic Preservation Committee had recommended be relocated earlier, and a suggestion for consideration that the town consider relocating it to the property that the town owns, but presently, as I understand, leases to the museum on the corner of Tate and West Main.
That's a portion of that property.
Yeah, a portion of the property, yeah, not in lieu of the museum staying there. There's a parking area that would be adjacent, further away from West Main. The town consider that as a location for that, since it fits into the neighborhood area and likely designated as additional space for the museum, and with an opinion from at least some members of the committee that one could do that and not could do without some of the parking places, since there's been a new parking area added at the corner of Linden and West Main.
But to clarify that, that is a suggestion, and it has to be followed up, and essentially it's not, nothing is happening except the further exploration, in other words.
Right, exactly. It was just a discussion, a follow-up discussion by the committee from its earlier kind of thing, and a suggestion to send forward from the
I
committee.
just wanted to make sure that was clear.
No specific action was taken by the committee other than I was given an assignment to report out.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other subcommittee reports? All right, seeing none, we are now into verbal communications from anyone in the audience who wants to speak about issues that are really not on the agenda, because you'll have an opportunity to speak about items on the agenda. So it's the public comment period, and if you do want to speak, I have no such cards. We would have asked you, and we do ask you to submit a card. Since I have none, this is on a non-agenda item. Okay. So I don't think I have anyone who wants to speak on a non-agenda item. Thank you. All right, so I think now there's nothing on the consent calendar. There's no continued public hearings. So the only thing we have before us now is the public hearing on the library. And for that purpose, I would ask a report of the staff.
Good evening. The library site is located on a portion of the Civic Center parcel, and there are currently 3 parcels that have 6 residential structures on them that are affected by the project. The existing buildings include the house at 17 Fiesta, which is the historic residence that Commissioner Erickson was mentioning. We call that 17 Fiesta House. There are 2 pre-1941 residences at 56 and 104 Villa, and then there's a second unit at 56A Villa, and 2 more residences at 25 Villa and 108 Villa. 2 of those houses are currently used as staff offices. 1 is just vacant and used for storage, and 2 were previously rented out but are now vacant. The Civic Center grounds also include Pageant Park and the Neighborhood Center property. The Planning Commission had a study session in November of 2008, and then in December of this year, or excuse me, of 2009, we've changed years. And then Town Council had a study session on December 21st to consider plans for the library. Tonight, the Commission is considering the plan development and general plan amendment applications. In conjunction with that, there's an architecture and site application for the demolition of the 4 residences. And initially, the Planning Commission has the ability to approve the architecture and site application, but we did recommend that the whole thing be forwarded to the council as a package. The proposal is to relocate the house, 17 Fiesta House. At this point, we're still investigating locations. We do not have an exact location for it. There are performance standards included in the historic evaluation, and those are also in our mitigation monitoring plan, and there's discussion on it in the environmental document as well. And that criteria will be used for evaluation of the location. The remainder of the residences are proposed to be demolished. The new library and 2 additional parking areas would be constructed. The Fiesta Way transition to Villa will become just a curved transition, and the T intersection will be eliminated as part of the project. And then there'll be a new landscaping that'll be occurring in the new parking areas and around the library and on the hillside up above the library as well. We do have 6.8 acres of town-owned property that is proposed to be rezoned. Currently, there's 4 different zoning designations on the property, and it would all be rezoned to C1 PD. And in the general plan amendment, we have 4 different general plan designations, and we are proposing to designate all as public. The rezoning is a component of the plan development application itself. A number of technical reviews were done for this project, including a tree inventory and arborist report, a phase 1 environmental assessment, geotechnical investigation and peer review, traffic impact analysis, a parking study, and the historical resources evaluation. All of those studies were folded into the environmental impact report. That environmental impact report, we initially did an initial study and a notice of preparation that went out in July of 2009. The draft EIR had a 45-day review period that started this fall and ended on December 4th. And as part of that, it went through the state clearinghouse and was distributed to a number of state agencies. The only comments we received on the EIR came from PG&E and VTA. There is a response to comments which you received, and that had a 10-day review period, which has been completed and addresses those 2 letters that we received. There's also a mitigation monitoring plan that's part of the project. All of the conditions recommended for the project are included in the plan development ordinance as performance standards, and then the ones that are relevant to environmental issues are in the mitigation monitoring plan as well, so those are duplicated in both documents. So as part of your recommendation this evening, we are asking that you make a recommendation on the EIR and mitigation monitoring plan and on the pending applications, which include the plan development, general plan amendment, and architecture and site application. The project architect, Danielle Sargent from Nolan Tam, is going to be doing a presentation. And following that, Danielle will be available for any questions, as will Pamela Jacobs, the project manager, myself, Kevin Rohani from Parks and Public Works. And we also have 2 representatives from Geyer & Geyer Consulting, the environmental consultant, present if you have any questions about the EIR. And that concludes staff's presentation. If you have any questions, we can answer those now, or we can let Diane go ahead and do her presentation and answer questions at that point.
Thank you. One thing I think I should mention, normally an applicant is given 5 minutes, and then people can speak for 3 minutes, and then the applicant can respond in 3 minutes. I see no particular reason that we should adhere to that procedure this evening, because it seems to me we're going to spend more time on the application than that. On the other hand, I want to be fair to anyone who also wants to speak and is not the applicant. So I'm going to suggest to my fellow commissioners that I'm going to make a suggestion, but believe me, it's just that. And if you'd like to improve it or change it, please say so. I suggest that maybe if we allow 15 minutes for the initial applicant's report, we can see if that seems adequate, and if it doesn't seem adequate, we of course can ask for more time. I would also suggest that unless there's some reason that I'm now not aware of, other people should still be limited to not more than 3 minutes. If because of this change, it appears to us as we proceed that there's something unfair about that, then I would invite your help on that. At the moment, I think it sounds fair. This is a big civic project, and it's going to take more time than I would think normally. So that's my suggestion. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add, subtract, or change? Okay, so then what we'll do on a timing basis is once we begin with what I call the applicant, we'll run it for 15 minutes. And and so we'll see where we go from there. So please, identify yourself and start.
Hi, I'm Danielle. Oh, let me do this. All right, this is going to be easier. Hi, I'm Danielle Sargent, and I'm from Nolan Tam Architects, and I'm going to walk you through a presentation that many of you have seen before, but we're going to go through it again. So we're here to discuss the new library, and we have some design tenets that we've had from the very beginning of the project. The library is warm and inviting. It looks outward and allows views inward. It works with and enhances the existing civic center, but it does not mimic it. Responds to nature and incorporates natural materials, and our goal of LEED Silver we're on track for. The location of the library is back against the hill, currently where we have the dirt parking lot. We are, as Suzanne said, taking the T out of Villa and Fiesta and connecting them. It's going to be a little bit wider. It's for emergency access. We have a plaza with a bioswale in the front. We have stone paving. The building itself is raised approximately 2 feet from the current level of the parking lot, and that is to reduce the cut back into the hill here so that we don't have a very high wall at the back. So the retaining wall back here is 2 to 3 feet, and then we're taking the natural grade of the hill back down towards the library. We are adding a parking lot here, we're adding a parking lot here, and we are creating a better layout of the existing lot that's already there, and that's the basic site plan. Let me just clarify here the houses that are going to be, this is the 17 Fiesta, these are the ones that are going to be removed, and this Fiesta house will be relocated. So that's the site plan without the houses on it. This is the view from East Main, looking back at the hill to where the new library is going to be located. And this is what it's going to look like with the library in there. We're maintaining as many of the existing trees on the site as we possibly can. It's a fairly large program. We actually reduced the program in order to fit it on the site. The site itself is one of the locations that was dictated in the master plan. So we're keeping in line with the master plan. This is the view on the side coming down the street before it curves. And this is the large plaza in front of the building. I just want to explain a little bit about the 2-foot raise that we talked about earlier. We've got a level here, and we've got a ramp up here, we've got steps, and we've got a ramp on the other side. It's a very gentle slope, but the slope allows us, like I said, not to cut back into the hill too much. It's a really beautiful hill, and we're trying to maintain the hill as much as possible. These are the 2 large existing trees that are there. We've got an oak and a cypress, and those are going to stay. This is the front of the building, basically at the curve, looking towards the front. You can barely see the ramp up front. We've got the tree on the right. We have a lot of glass to the north. This building is LEED Silver, as we mentioned, and one of the ways to do that is use as much natural light as possible. And we've closed down the openings to the south. You'll see that as we walk around the building. The building materials are a porcelain tile. It looks like stone. Council really loved it, and we had a lot of material selections out before, but this is the one that everybody really liked. The pop-out at the front is a wood veneer panel, and the color aligns with the brick color on the Civic Center. This is walking around. These are Revit models, which is a little more technical, but gets you an idea. This is the view from the actual existing Civic Center, sort of cruising around the building. The large piece on the right that you see is a louver-covered glazing element. We've got a clear story up at the top that brings light down into the large floor plan, so you, on a clear day, you won't have to use any lights. This is the back view from Pageant Park with a little picnic happening up there. This is the back side. You can see that there's less openings on the south to cut down on the heat gain from that side. Also, you can see there's a little wall here and the slope of the hill's coming up. And we're going to be adding some native plants back in on that hillside. These are the materials. We've got the porcelain stone here. We've got a gray stone that's the base of the building. And then you have the wood panels. And then native plants. You've got your glass. And the glazing system is going to be a champagne color, which is a light color, but it's a warm color. As we said, we're solidly in LEED silver. We're pushing for more. And this little representation is actually currently on view in the library, and it goes through all the different features, connection to public transit. You guys have a great transit system here, so we've got that. The landscaping is all going to be low water, xeriscape planting. The plaza and the rock, we have a bioswale, and what that does is it takes the water off of the roof, and instead of putting it back into the storm drains, it allows it to gradually percolate down back into the soil. We have a small photovoltaic array up on the top of the clear story that shades that south portion of it and actually generates some energy at the same time. Daylighting is a big one. Recycled content, we're going to be getting LEED points for recycling the waste that's generated during construction, and also using recycled content in our interior materials as well. And that's it for LEED. If anybody has any questions on that, I'd be glad to go into it. Floor plans. The floor plans are zoned a number of ways. There's 2 floors, total of 30,000 square feet. The staff area is here. When you come in from the front, you have this stair that goes up to the 2nd floor. To your right as you enter, but left on the drawings, is the children's area. And then right behind the stair, you have the periodicals area, which is kind of like the living room for the community. And there's a courtyard back here. There's a little bit higher retaining wall in order to create this garden. Staff points are, here's your desk. We're going to have a little cafe. And here's reserves and holds. The children's staff point, lots of computers here, early learning, and then the stacks. And this view goes straight out towards the park. This is the 2nd floor, and the 2nd floor, you've got teens over here, you've got the history over here, so you've got sort of the loud and the quiet, and this is the adult collection. So at the 2nd level, you're going to have sort of reading areas all along the perimeter. You've got a history area that looks out towards Pageant Park, a lot of computers here, lounge seating, and stacks on both sides. This is that big area where you have the clear story up above. This is the building section, so you can see the clear story I'm talking about. So some will come in and get all the way down to the ground level. Come in, there's a stair, and up you go. And back towards the front. This is a digital rendering. The first one you saw was watercolor. This is with the tree shadows on an early morning coming in, probably about 9 a.m. And that's it. So as Suzanne said, Pamela, Suzanne, and I will all take questions.
Okay, so we have some additional comments first before we, no, okay. Let me just ask you, before we ask questions, can you go back to the beginning of that slide? There was a photo of looking from the existing
Side.
town straight into the proposed new building.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see that again.
From East Main?
It's, pardon me?
From East Main Street?
Yes, yes. So
There
it's, the
there it
next
is
one.
without the library.
Yeah, the next one.
There it is with the
Okay, that's
library.
the one I wanted to look at. Okay, thank you very much. Now, any questions from the commission? Commissioner, yes.
I'm not sure which slide, but you have a layout of parking spaces.
Yeah.
If you could just go back to that real quick. One of the questions I had was where you were planning to do bicycle parking.
Yeah, we can talk about that. The bicycle parking we're thinking about right here. Right now, there's only a few shown. We actually want to add quite a few more. The current layout of this parking lot sort of comes down and then does a couple little fingers. We've actually paved over, created that bioswale, and we have a much deeper plaza than currently exists now between the parking and the hill. And so we're thinking right in here. Is that a good spot for you? Okay. Okay.
All right, are there other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, would there, Commissioner Telesworth?
I do have, oops, sorry, I do have one. It's about your tile material.
Sure.
I'm curious as to, I've not ever seen it in person. I'm sorry you don't have the materials with you tonight, or do you?
We don't have them with us, but Pamela has some.
I could go get some. We did have them at the last meeting. I could run up.
Oh, that'd be
like me to
great.
do
Yeah,
that?
that'd be great. But what I wanted to know, because
Stop for one
yeah.
second. Do you want us to
What?
take a short recess while you do it?
No, you can't.
Okay.
It's fine, because this is not, I really am interested in how you adhere these together.
It's applied similar to a stone veneer or a thinner brick. You basically build a regular wall, and then you treat it like a stucco wall, but the last layer of stucco is something called laticrete, which is like a glue, and it goes on, and then you go back and you grout it.
So when you grout it, in all of your renderings, it looks like it's, the tile rather mimics, I can't decide whether it's this watercolor is the true version of it, or it's the computer-generated drawing here, because they're both very different.
Yeah, the computer-generated drawings that are between the two renderings are not correct. So those are just really basic, sort of get the idea of the volume. This one is more correct, as well as the one at the very end. The tile itself has modulation within the different types of, within the field, so you're going to have...
But they are really applied to be flat with each other.
Yes.
And the grout is, it's all even. It's not
Yes.
to be, whereas something like brick has a little more shadowing. This will not have shadowing?
It won't have that much shadowing as a brick. This interior brick has the grout pushed really far back. A lot of brick has the, what they call a finger or thumb line, and it goes back in as well.
Did you already mention it would be patterned as brick, however?
It
as
is
he's laying
patterned,
it out?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
not-
what? It's patterned as brick.
It's not going to be straight across like that. It's going to be staggered, or I don't know. what you call
Staggered.
it, Staggered.
I see. Thank you.
This one's more.
Okay.
Correct.
Other questions? Commissioner Sayak?
With this, you talk about recycled content, and Is there any possibility or attempt to use the materials from the 5 buildings that are being demolished and using any of those materials as recycled?
It's a separate project, so, I think part of it, since they're happening at 2 separate times, we hadn't really looked into that. We are looking at potentially using some of the trees to create furniture, and some of the concrete in the existing houses. I don't know that we can reuse it on the site because we're not really filling holes in the site like you would normally use that. It'd be great if we could find, someone to take it for salvage, but I don't think it can go back into the library.
And as to the demolition, they will be salvaging and recycling the materials, not in our library, but elsewhere. The one thing that will be incorporated in the library are the mosaics that are is it 56A or 56 at 56 Villa? There's some lovely mosaics that will be incorporated in the courtyard or some of the landscaping somewhere.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that concludes the town's presentation. All right, I only have one card at the moment, so to the extent that anyone else wants to speak, I would request that you hand the clerk your cards. So there's plenty of time if you want to submit something so you can speak. And so calling the first and only card I have at the moment, Cliff Peterson.
Am I at the right height?
Well, you can take it out and hold it.
Just want to make sure I'm getting across. Okay. It's hard to hear back. Good evening. We've had correspondence we've sent to you, and it's in your packet, so I won't be going into a lot of detail about what we've said before, but I just wanted to let you know, my wife and I, we're the Petersons. We live at 110 Wooded View Drive. I'm an architect. I've had 45 years of experience in this field. Now, I move around a lot, so I'm probably not going to be too clear on the microphone. The main thing I wanted to get across to you is that we've lived in this town a long time, and my whole architectural career, I guess, has been pretty much in this town. And when we first moved to town was when this civic center was being built. It was quite a thing in its day. It was selected by a jury type thing. You don't see those anymore, where communities will hold juries to try to find the best design they can get from a field of architects. It was built beautifully, very rugged construction. It's won a lot of awards over after it was completed, and these were national AIA awards. So I've always kind of had a real feel about this building and about the Civic Center itself. Let's see. This building has, as you probably know, has not changed probably one iota. They added a handicap ramp on the side, but it's just stayed, and it's kept its really viable reputation as having been an award-winning building in my estimation. The trees are bigger, but the building has really pretty much stayed the same. It's weathered well, and one of the concerns that we had in our correspondence is I had a lot of experience with commercial buildings, not just residential buildings, but commercial buildings. And I kind of know how they go together and how they behave and how they weather and what they're going to look like maybe 20 years down the road. I feel the existing Civic Center here is going to look good another 50 years, 40 years from now. I'm concerned that the building being built alongside of it is not going to have that same performance from a weathering standpoint, and it's going to be a very, that's the right word, I think it's going to have a negative effect on the whole design of the Civic Center. Now, I know you're not here to try to make great changes in the design of it, because the design is, I'm sure, pretty much set by now, but what I had some ideas, and I just wanted to throw these out, and hopefully they'll elicit some discussion or bring out some conversation on your part to pass up to the line to the council members. The first thing I've had the most concerned about, other than I think it's a very
Take a couple more minutes.
Okay, I'll go quickly. It's I feel a very boxy, unempathetic design to the rest of the Civic Center. I think it's a confused design with a lot of different elements. It doesn't seem to have a clear, forceful message to it. But I'm mostly concerned about the fake stone veneer going on it. I don't see why we have to have a fake stone veneer, except maybe it might be a more graffiti-proof. But we are not a big graffiti problem in our town. It's only going to look like what it looks like on that table. It's a flat piece of tile. It doesn't remotely resemble a stone material. It doesn't have the variations. It's not going to weather like stone. It's not going to get a natural patina as the years go by. I think it's just going to look back 20 years from now and say, well, that was a fashionable porcelain tile in the day, but it's not something that's being used nowadays. I think it's going to date the building. I would really much prefer you use real stone. I'm also very concerned about the east elevation facing down Villa Way. I think it's a kind of an affront. I don't think it would be an elevation you'd approve on any other building in town. It doesn't have any respect for the neighbors down the street. The other thing I think you might look at is the way the glazing is put together. It's a lot of glass, and there's a lot of common ordinary aluminum framing going on. Different patterns of it. I would suggest that there could be, with expenditure of a little more money, a truly transparent glazing system, which would be a structural glass mullion system. Could be very nice. I find the pop-out element to be a gimmick. I think it's just like something flew into the side of the building. I don't think it really works, and I think it's going to be another trite thing that's going to look not too good in about 10 years. The other thing is the interior. I feel that from the drawings that I was able to see that there's going to be a lot of exposed steel, a lot of truss work, a lot of glass. I don't see a warm, inviting interior that's going to ask anybody to linger. So that's about it. Those are my comments, and hopefully they'll elicit some conversation on your part.
Okay, if you just hold for a second to see if we have any questions. Are there any questions of the speaker? Commissioner Sayoc.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson, for your comments. You were very specific with a lot of it, specifically like the veneer. But with regard to the elevation facing Villa Avenue, anything specific there other than you don't like it?
It's flat. There's no stepping of the facade. There's no indentation of the windows. It's just, there's a lot of pattern of some windows and employee entrance, but it's just straight up and down commercial, high-tech North First Street kind of a building look. If it's not so bad if that faced another direction where you really didn't see it, but coming down Villa, I think it's just going to leap right out at people and not going to be pleasant.
May I do a follow-up?
Sure, please.
But from what I understand, it's to control the heating because it's south-facing. So without adding windows there, what kind of...
Well, there's no relief to the elevation. There's like you in common residential requirements in town here, it's set back the second floor, give it some relief, some eyebrows, God forbid trellising, but to do something to personalize that building. I think everything was focused on the front facing the plaza, and this was just a leftover result of the floor plan. And I think it's a mistake.
Are there other, yes, Commissioner Telesfor.
Right, and this is a question about something that you've written in your letter, and it said, and you mentioned it tonight, about injecting some feeling of warmth and welcome, and I'd like to know what that means, because it's you know.
Well, I worked on I don't know if you're familiar with the Water District headquarters building on Alberton Expressway, and we went to tall ceilings, 3-story lobby. We went to great pains to do the interior finishes with, cherry wood, and, maybe the Water District could afford more than the town of Los Gatos can. But just the leaving the bare steel structure, it's a hangar. It looks to me like a commercial building, or you're walking into a Costco or something. I just don't see it as being a place but people would want to linger and read and so forth.
I
So
understand
that's
what
it.
you're saying, but
Yeah.
so you're referring, I thought here you were referring to the exterior, but you're referring to the interior?
No, 0.5. I was talking about, I'm really a lot concerned about the interior as well as the exterior.
Are you two on the same letter?
Yeah.
There are two letters.
There's
One-
two letters. This one is signed by both of you, and this is dated December 15th. And it just says I'm sorry, it was received December 15th, dated December 9th. It says, if nothing can be done about the boxy massing of the exterior of this building, at least please revisit the selection of the exterior. And then in parentheses, you put in interior, materials to possibly inject some feeling of warmth and welcome, and that's what I was referring to.
Correct, yes,
So you were
both.
talking about the interior, and I
I think
wanted
the exterior is a lot warmer in tones and materials than the interior, as far as I can tell from the drawings. My feeling is that you walk in with steel columns, exposed steel truss work. It
Okay.
doesn't look like any kind of library I'd want to spend much time in.
Peterson, let's clarify the question. I think she's understood your answer on the interior. Now you want the exterior?
what is the exterior opinion that you have about it being more welcoming and provide, let's see, inject some feeling of warmth and welcome, which is your words.
To the interior
To
is
the
the main thing.
exterior.
And to the exterior, I find the very flat plane of that cladding, the aluminum and glass, the abrupt two-story elevation, I think it's a foreboding kind of a building. It doesn't seem like it's a welcoming environment to me.
Okay.
The existing civic center here, even though brick and concrete can be harsh, it has it's a lower scale. It has a relieved elevations that I think are a lot more friendly than what this building is going to turn out to be.
Okay, so you're referring to scale in your warmth and welcome
Yes, I think so.
for the exterior. Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay.
I have two more cards. I have a card from, I think it's Don Waters.
Good evening. My name is Don Waters. I'm a lifelong resident of Los Gatos, and I'm very happy with the library coming down the way I've seen it coming down. My whole family, going from a couple of high school kids to young grammar school kids, all use the library and get a great use out of it. And at times, even the little ones have commented about how crowded it is. So, we've all gone over round and round, I think, with regards to the new library. It's more than needed, and very pleased with the design and look forward to the grand opening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Thank you, sir. Next card I have is Vicki Wendell.
Hi, I've never addressed the Planning Commission before. I represent probably 20 or 30 people I've talked to who are dismayed with, not with the LEED thing, that's great, and I think the layout inside the library looks good. It's good to have a lot of light. I agree that it's going to look rather industrial. As a matter of fact, I think it looks very industrial, and most people do. So I was wondering if we could project the front facade of the library for a moment.
I'm sure we could.
Yeah, this is what we saw in the weekly news. Quite a few of us had been following this and trying to attend meetings, but they were few and far between, so it was hard to, at least the ones that we were invited to, so it was, sometimes we'd be out of town or whatever. Anyway, we first saw this along with our neighbors and friends, and the feeling was, I think you can still hear me because this isn't that big a room.
Pardon me, just take the microphone with you, yes. It'll slip right out.
Okay. Okay, so our feeling in looking at this, my feeling was that it looked exactly like the factory I worked at in Detroit when I was in high school, especially when you see it, from the street view. It's very square. So having, I was just last week on a architectural tour of the Rockefeller Center. Anyway, this is a lot different, but if there could be some softening, which I don't think would be terribly expensive. For example, the entryway is very square. Is there any way to have some kind of welcoming slight arch to it? These windows are very, very square. Is there any way to put some kind of arch and casing around the windows? This invites graffiti. I know you can scrub it off, but I would recommend maybe trellises or something with plantings so that, you know, if there's nothing there, you may as well have a trellis with plants, because I've taught high school kids, and they see this as a canvas. You know, they want to express their individuality, and boy, that's a nice one. The whole town could see it. And then, if it's possible to maybe, again, put, like somebody called it an eyebrow or something, you know, over this type of thing. I think just a few architectural amendments could soften this building a lot and make it much more welcoming and make us feel like we're proud of having this building instead of wincing when we go by. I live about a half mile from here.
All right. Are there any questions of the speaker? Yes, Commissioner Jensen.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I understood from your comments, and I just want to make sure, did you or any of the people that you're speaking on behalf of attend any of the design charrettes or any of the study sessions regarding the library?
Like I said, I think a lot of us were trying to. I kept putting my email on all kinds of lists and never got an email saying we're having a meeting. I think we were supposed to see it in the weekly, which is how I found this meeting. And when I came to this meeting, the door was actually locked. Somebody had to let me in. So I've just been frustrated in trying to. I actually even applied to be on the library board before the library was built. So I made some effort.
Okay. So you didn't make it to any meetings?
I didn't make it to the meetings, no.
Thank you.
Just for the record, too, because I didn't ask you to do this, but I'm just going to just read it in the record. Your address is it 135? No, 155 Jackson Street in Los Gatos. Thank you. The next card I have is from Lee Quintana.
Lee Quintana, 5 Palm Avenue. I've lived in the town about 35 years. And pun intended, the new library is long overdue. I applaud the fact that we're going to get a new library. I do have a couple of questions and maybe some suggestions. And a clarification I'd like to ask. I did not see exactly where the cafe is proposed to be located. If somebody could point that out to me. And in conjunction with that, I was wondering whether there was going to be a door so that there could be outside seating. You could get your book, grab your coffee, go sit outside and read. Solar panels were mentioned, and I was curious to know what % of the electricity will be provided by solar. Also like to know what % of the materials used in the construction are planned to be from local sources. Then I have one suggestion in terms of that also speaks to leads. Recently I was in Toronto, and the first time ever I had the experience of using a Tyson hand dryer. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, but it's an electric dryer that's used in restrooms, and it does not use heat. It takes about 5 seconds. You just stick your hands in and pull them out, and they're immediately dry. And so I see that as a energy-saving device. I also felt that as you approach the library, the plaza there doesn't seem very inviting, and I think there were some suggestions made in the way of planting or trellises. From an architectural standpoint, I'm not going to make any comments at all, really, except to say that I was disappointed that the materials were not as contextual with the existing Civic Center building as they are. I think the library would look out of place if it were not a more modern angular building, but I think that the brick and the concrete on the rest of the Civic Center has a warmer feeling to it than the stone or the faux stone. And lastly, I would like to, if it isn't already in the conditions, because I don't know what it is, I haven't read them, that you recommend that a condition be added that the mosaics are preserved and moved to the new library in some fashion, and that those trees that are of furniture grade quality be used for some of the furniture in the library. And I also wanted to comment on Commissioner Jensen's question. I attended not the charrette, I don't believe, because I was out of town, but I have attended just about every other meeting that's occurred on the library, and a lot of the comments that you've heard about the materials were made at those meetings.
Excuse me, are there any questions of the speaker?
I would like clarification of where the...
Well, yeah, we got all your questions, and if the applicant has the right to respond, and we'll wait and see if they do. Thank you. The next card I have is for Dale Hill.
Good evening. I spoke to you at your last meeting and don't have a whole lot new to say except to reiterate the fact that the square footage we're getting is 18,000 feet less than was recommended. A lot of talk about stepping down and stepping back. I think the idea is that with limited land and limited money, the architects and the staff are trying to make this a functional library so that we get as much use out of it as possible. No plan is going to please everybody, and, you know, everybody can argue about, you know, too light or too dark or so forth like you did last time, but it's been 20 years getting to this point. We need to break ground in June or July, and I'm excited that it has space in it. It has place for the staff to work efficiently, which they haven't had for these many years. The history room, where my husband works one day a week, is basically a closet. On the way to the staff room, there will be a place called the history room. It's going to work, and there will be enough room in the children's department for story time, which there isn't always. So I'm not trying to speak to any of the previously discussed quibbles on details, but I'm excited that we're going to get a library that's going to work, that'll hold more of us and hold more materials, and I encourage you to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Carol Hamilton.
I'm Carol Hamilton. I live at 368 Bella Vista Avenue. I'm president of the Friends of the Los Gatos Library. And really, tonight, I just came down to thank you all for going ahead and hopefully going ahead with something that is dear to my heart. I can't tell you the first time I remember that we started, I think it was like in the 80s, that the library was put on an agenda, and then because of the earthquake and all, we didn't do it. So now that we're seeing something happening, it's exciting to me. I work 2 days a week as a volunteer in the library, and I can tell you it becomes real interesting when school's out. There's really not any room for anybody, and be out of the way because the kids are there, and they're having a good time, they're studying, and it's a wonderful place, but it's just not big enough. And so I don't know anything about the architecture. I've sat through it and listened to it, and it all sounds fine to me. I'm just really feel that the important thing is that we go ahead and that's, you know, and have this finished so that we have a new building and room for all the kids and the adults. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Ms. Hamilton? Thank you again. I have another card from, I believe it's Rita Baum.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. I have lived in Los Gatos about 20 years, went to San Jose State much longer ago than that. Since I first moved to Los Gatos, I was surprised that the library was as small as it was, and that was in 1984. And it had been built in 1967, I understand, when our population was between 7,000 and 9,000 people. Now it's in the neighborhood of 30,000. There's not enough space for the collection, for computers. I'm taking an ancestry class with some friends from Los Gatos, and they tell me that they don't check their genealogy at the computers here at Los Gatos because they don't want to wait their turn for a computer. So therefore, they can go to Saratoga or Campbell, and while they're there, they can just pick up whatever book they happen to need. Los Gatos is a community of very well-educated people of higher income, and it's embarrassing that we have the small library we do. We are the last town in our county to build an adequate library. We have a magnificent staff, wonderful attitude and philosophy, but we need to house them in a larger, better facility. And so I'm so glad to learn, or when I learned a few months ago that we're going to be building a new library, and I just applaud all those involved in making that decision for finally making this dream a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of the speaker? Thank you, Ms. Baum. Those are all the cards I have. So that being the case, I would ask the applicant then to conclude.
I will try to respond to some of the more straightforward questions or comments. The comments about the design and materials are a bit more challenging. I'll speak a little to that. As far as some of the straightforward questions and comments, there is a cafe. It is in the lobby. As you go in the door, it'll be to the right. And one could take their coffee out in the front patio or plaza area, or we also have in the reading room in the back of the library, opens up into a courtyard that will be set against the hill. It'll be a lovely setting for one to take their coffee or other beverage from the cafe. So we do have that outside seating. As to the percent of electricity provided by the solar, the percent of local sources, I don't know that Danielle will have those actual percentages. What I can say is we are going to achieve LEED Silver, and that's a key part of achieving LEED Silver, and so we'll be achieving as much percentages as we can. We're actually pretty close to gold and hoping to get that, and so I don't think you would have the exact figures on that, would you, Danielle? Because we're not to that specificity now because we're still trying to get as much as we can, so we don't have those answers. All of the meetings with the Planning Commission and particularly the Council, because the Council has been discussing the new library for about 2 years, all of those meetings are posted. They're also advertised on the web. One can sign up to receive emails with the agendas for the council meetings. All of the agendas are posted in a public place and on the web, so one can find out when the meetings are. If we get a specific request to be on a list, we would include that as well. We have not had a specific request for this particular project. Let's see. Any other street? Oh, the mosaics, as far as being a condition, Suzanne checked, and it is not in the conditions, so we could add that because we do intend to do it. So, and we have that recommendation from the Historic Preservation Committee. So there's definitely, we will do it, and that could be added formally as well. Well, the hand dryers will. Oh, do we have those hand dryers yet? We're looking at all the
We
fixtures.
do have hand dryers, but we don't have the Tyson ones, and the Tyson ones are actually really great. So we'll look at them. There's a big debate about whether paper towels or hand dryers are more eco-friendly, and it comes out slightly ahead for the hand dryers. And the Tyson ones are about $1,800 a pop. But
compared to
$600-700.
Okay.
But they're quick, and getting your hands dry is a great thing. So they're nice dryers.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the design and materials, again, those are challenging questions or comments because we all have our own opinion and view about architecture and design. The porcelain tile does indeed have a texture. You could go and feel it. It does have a texture. It does indeed have color variations. I have these 3 panels here, but we have a box full of panels, and they definitely have variations. So it is not a monochromatic color on those panels, so there is definitely texture and variation. They have long durability as far as their life and their ability to withstand the weather and not fade, so they are sturdy and durable. It was very important to the town to go with the porcelain tile as opposed to the natural stone. We did discuss it. Our Parks and Public Works Director is here, and he could speak more to that if necessary. As to the maintenance challenges that we have with the entire Civic Center, looking at a new building, we want to minimize the maintenance requirements for fiscal reasons, and it was very important to us to go with the stone because it would be able to be cleaned much easier with if there was graffiti or other issues related to it. The community member Dale Hill spoke to the limited land and limited budget, and that is definitely a factor in the design of the building. The program for the building was to be nearly 40,000 square feet. We have this site that accommodates 30,000 square feet, and we do want to optimize the space for the library services because that is the most important thing in building the new library, and it is our belief that this building does that very well. It does have articulation with the corners are articulated out. We think the pop-out offers that kind of articulation. And basically, as to the style, it does need to fit into the context of the Civic Center. That's a given. Another type of style would stick out like a sore thumb. So it needs to fit in the context, and yet we're building it in 2010 to 2012, so it needs to reflect the times as well. So we believe that this is a blend of fitting in with the Civic Center and yet complementing it and adding actually, we believe these colors are much warmer than the Civic Center, so people have different views about which one's warmer. My personal view is these colors are much more warm than the Civic Center. And I guess I'll just wait to see if there's other questions on that, but those are just some of the general thoughts. And then it's written, there's text about it as well that in response to some of the earlier comments about the choice of the colors, the choice of the materials, and the design overall. Noel and Tam have built many libraries, and many have won awards, and we think that this one is destined to win one as well.
Other questions? Commissioner Telesfor?
Question, you mentioned graffiti, and I'm curious, what's the present, how much of a problem is graffiti presently in the Civic Center? Because I haven't really seen anything, so either someone's out here washing the walls every day, I don't know.
Hello, I'm Todd Capurso.
You'll identify yourself for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Todd Capurso, Director of Parks and Public Works. We really don't have much of a graffiti problem at the Civic Center per se. We do have occasional graffiti in the downtown area. We've noted it on some of the garbage enclosures, trash enclosures along Highway 9, along North Santa Cruz, on the backs of buildings. We typically get it painted out with the assistance of our volunteers through the police department in 24 to 48 hours. But on this building, we haven't had much of a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Jensen.
From an energy efficiency standpoint, is there any appreciable difference between the porcelain, veneer, or natural stone? Because I take it that the LEED certification and the green nature of the building is a priority, so I was just wondering if the stone versus veneer had any ramifications.
They're about the same for LEED. Most tile you can't really use recycled content in, or too much recycled content, because when they fire it, it kind of ruins the technical performance of the tile. And then stone, most natural materials are recyclable, so stone in and of itself would be recyclable. But then there's an argument that you're taking stone out of hillsides. So between the two, there's no clear winner from a LEED perspective.
Commissioner Bourgeois, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Jacobs, if you could at least spell out for me the material selection process, because it seems to have happened, did that happen at a study session with council, or, because we got testimony last time that council had strong opinions and selected a certain color palette and a certain materials palette, and I'm trying to understand when that happened, what that process was.
There were study sessions, I believe 2 of them. We also had a council subcommittee, a 2-member council subcommittee that worked with us throughout the process to provide advice, and we would take issues like this to them for their input and then take them to council in public meetings and study sessions to get input. And we did not have any input from any audience member in any of those meetings with any contrary thought about the materials.
Commissioner Telesfor?
Yeah, this is follow-up also to the stone.
You have to wait a second.
That's all right. So I'm curious of why you picked such a thin tile stone when there, I mean, I think there are other choices. Did you look at any choices that were perhaps thicker and a little more contextual? Or who would I don't know, who do I address that to?
Well, let me see if I understand the process.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bourgeois asked a question, and it wasn't clear to me how this was done. We're on the Planning Commission. Normally, these questions would have come before us. It didn't come before us this time. It did come before the council, but there was a 2-person subcommittee of the council. I don't know who decided what, but I do know that some people are asking, why weren't you here before? I was here before, and the first time I saw any of this was last month. So at that point, this was pretty well done. So as far as I'm concerned, it may be, people can think it's great, and that's fine, but I don't think one can say that the public perhaps should have had more input, because I don't think the system was designed so the public or the Planning Commission could have more input. So I just say that. I'll have some further comments later, but I just, that is my impression. I have missed very few Planning Commission meetings this year. And last meeting, the study session, I asked some questions about this, and this is so unlike any matter I've ever had come before the Planning Commission that one would imagine that the applicant is different. So,
I would like to add that we did bring the materials to the study session with the Planning Commission in March 2009. We did bring them forward.
so you were developed in March?
It was the conceptual design, and we would have brought the materials as part of that discussion with the Planning Commission.
How, just curiosity, how far along were you in March?
In conceptual design.
Question?
So, okay. Thank you. I'm just curious, did you ever consider a thicker tile that would have more context to it?
We did, and we were looking at stone as well as terracotta. This particular material, a number of materials early in the conceptual phase, and the thicker stones would have required a heavier structure and been far beyond the budget of this project.
I'm not talking about, full stone, but I'm talking, they do make, I don't know what they call it, but
3/8 or
right.
5/8 inch or 1 inch thick. But that was the stone that we had as one of the options in our early conceptual phases. We had a number of materials that were presented at the meetings, and this is the one that was selected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Erickson?
Given, this is probably for Ms. Jacobs, given that the program at some point was in excess of 40,000 square feet, and the site and the budget limited it to 30,000 square feet approximately. Can you clarify a couple of things about that? Did the 40+ thousand include needs or wants? If you know the difference between what I mean between that. And assuming that the needs, the second question would be moot depending upon the answer to the first. Assuming that the needs, that the 40,000 plus were responding to actual needs, was there consideration in the design of the present facility how one might expand it at the site if additional dollars were available in the future, and or as the needs of the town change over time, will the only alternative be to locate the library at some other place if the needs in the future require, if either the money becomes available to expand the library or to have a satellite library or to respond to those other needs either known now or that might be in the future?
One of the biggest functions that is not included in this library that was included in the original program was a community room, and that's generally a sizable, takes up a lot of space. And that is why when we're planning for the reuse of the existing library, that's a top priority to include a community room there. The other spaces that were whittled down, or mostly whittled down, I can't think of any other that were actually excluded. The Assistant Library Director, Glenda Dido, is here, and she could speak to this if she has additional information. Are ones that were probably more in the want rather than the need. Now, as time goes on, I'm sure everybody in the community would like more space, but at this point we have not identified how the building could be expanded. The thought, I guess, as I think about it now, it would be to go to the east, but then you would have to do underground parking someplace, because we want to be able to park a bigger library on the Civic Center property.
Is there a follow-up, or?
I guess I'll say my.
Okay. Are there other questions? Yes, Commissioner Boudoir.
I would like the architect maybe to come back up, and I'd like to hear a response to especially on the east facade, the concerned about the designs and the lack of articulation on that facade specifically. I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on the design and those comments.
Let me get the image back to that slide. Let's see, you can see part of it here. Go back to the view. This is the side that we're talking about to your left, and it is less articulated than the other portions of the building. The mechanical rooms are behind there. We also it's the east side of the building. We wanted to close it down to direct sun. So there was comments previously as to why there was no openings on that side. We also felt that, there are some pauses in any building, that there are areas of a building that doesn't have extended articulation. I think it looks great. I think it's a subjective opinion in some ways. It is a side that you're going to be looking at as you drive down the street. There are going to be trees in front of it. But really your perception of the building is as you drive around the corner. So I don't know if that answers the question. Yes?
Could you put the view up that I'm showing you? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the wall we're talking about, right?
Yeah, and what you can't see behind it is the windows and the openings. The other image showed it a little bit better.
Let me see if I'm not sure. Are you through with your question?
I think so.
I'm not sure I fully understand, and I understand the equipment there and other things. As I understood, the suggestion was there could be more articulation, there could be some setback, there could be various things, so you wouldn't have just a big wall like that. I'm not sure what your response to that was.
Well, as far as setbacks, I think we talked earlier that the square footage of the building we're at where we need to be as far as how it works on the inside. It is a functional building. The aesthetics on the outside match the function of the plans on the inside. And we took great care to look all the way around the building, and this particular view is one that was set up for the EIR report. It's a very specific point in the plan of the site. I think that it would feel different as you walked around it.
What did it have to do with the EIR?
We selected certain views in order to represent the building for the EIR. This was one of the views that was requested that we look at, and this is the view that we generated.
Are there other questions? Commissioner Talaswar?
It was so to answer the gentleman who spoke about adding a trellis or something to the side, and to follow up with Commissioner O'Donnell, could something possibly be added to this wall?
I think there were two separate comments. Someone wanted the trellis on the other side, and I think there was a general comment about articulation on the wall. I would say at this point we can't really articulate the wall because the drawings are almost done. As far as adding trellises, those are easy to do. I would leave that up to the town staff and council to determine whether that's what they wanted to do. Thank you.
When you say that plans are almost complete, what percentage would you characterize that?
They're going to be done in 3 weeks.
Okay, so when we're discussing the design tonight, it's really kind of hypothetical?
Ori?
Let me remind the Commission that what you have before you are a series of applications all related to the PD. The PD does not ultimately approve the architecture of the site, of the structure itself. It approves essentially the land use, the location, the essential size, and other related details, but not the final architecture. The final architecture will require a subsequent architecture and site application under current town policy. As you recall, with PDs, once approved by council, if approved by council, the architecture and site would be referred to DRC for final approval. Of course, it could be appealed, and if so, it would come to the Planning Commission. But your comments concerning design, of course, must go to, and should go to council, because council is not only ultimately the body that will approve the PD, but it's, it's the owner, and the owner has exercised judgment regarding what the building should look like, how big it should be, how it should be designed, and the kind of materials that should be employed, and of course the cost limitations associated with it. And your opinions, your thoughts about that design are critical to their decision making. I don't know if that helps, but it will, I think, further the process.
But it is fair to say that the plans are almost done. So our opinions, which are critical, may be a little late.
Plans are done to the extent that there's a schedule that, and it's an aggressive schedule that staff, under the direction of the council, has attempted to maintain. But that schedule, of course, is always going to be subject to the land use entitlement process, which has to be completed before anything can be ultimately constructed. So if, for example, there was a critical problem that was discovered in the entitlement process that required changes, then they would have to be changed. That's all there is to it. But, of course, there are the practical facts associated with the timing and who has directed that timing.
Are there any other questions?
I do have,
I
have a couple of questions that are not related to facade building. And this is in the, pardon me? Yeah, response to comments of the, I guess it's the EIR, and it's on page 7, or chapter 7. And it really is about the town of Los Gatos concurs with the VTA about the long-term bicycle storage facilities. And it says, as recommended, the town will consider the addition of bicycle storage lockers, which I think is fine, but I was wondering where they would be located. Would they be located on this site? Has that even been thought of yet with that?
The location has not yet been identified. We are committing to explore whether we have the need and then the location, but it could be elsewhere on the Civic Center site as well.
So
because it would probably be for all of Civic Center employees, not just library employees.
I see. I wasn't sure, if that was something we needed to look at. And then I have 2 other questions. Okay, one is about the Pageant Park integration. In doing the planning for that, has that, I did review the council meeting, but where are we on that? Is there any planning at all? Is there any integration planning, so we can actually see how we would integrate the library area to the park?
No, the planning has not yet begun. If you reviewed the council meeting, so
I just
you
wondered
knew
if
that it's a priority of the councils as it was of this commission. I believe Commissioner Bourgeois spoke to that as well. As a result of getting that input, staff is going to put the transition for Pageant Park into the capital improvement plan. It'll have to be in an out year at this point because we don't have funding in a sooner year, and perhaps if we can, we will put it in next year's CIP to do the planning for it. The way that the project, however, has been designed, it has been designed to accommodate an entry. So there's nothing in the design that would interfere with the entryway, because that's always been a long-term goal. And also, we're hopeful that if we were able to go to bid soon in this market and get favorable bids, that there could be funds in the budget, and that would be a priority.
You answered my question, especially about the fact that you do have something in mind. All right. And then my last question is about condition 46, which is transportation and traffic mitigation measure. And it's about the traffic control shall be developed to include, to prohibit trucks on East Main Street during the school PM peak hours. I'm curious about why the AM peak hours were not included in that.
Actually, I know that that is the condition. Our responses was raised in the previous Planning Commission meeting, and actually the off-haul will occur during the summer. If we keep the schedule, it'll occur during the summer, and there will be no high school traffic, which will be the best of all. If it were to delay and occur during school, I thought we were actually going to change that. We should probably change it just in case, although we do intend to.
I would check on the summer school schedule, because summer school might be.
It's Saratoga.
It's at Saratoga this year. But we do have summer school for, elementary school and a lot of recreation classes throughout town. So I definitely would. I don't know how we
do
amend
expect
that,
only like a week of off-haul. It's not a long period of time,
Okay.
but your comments will be taken
But
into
also,
account.
even during the construction period, I think we need to be, rather cognizant of that as well. So, thank you.
Town engineer heard that comment. He'll be managing that process.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? If there are not, I think we can close the public hearing and have discussion and then a motion or motions. So I think each of us should be given an opportunity to offer some comments, but not a requirement. So I think just arbitrarily, I'll start down with Commissioner Erickson and ask us to move whichever way this way is towards me.
Okay, so I'll give it a whirl first. So I understand and hear very clearly some of the concerns expressed by the public and fellow commissioners about the design. It seems like to me that ideally the design of the library should reflect the values of the town and the role of the library. And it's when we talk about small town service, community stewardship, and future focus, the library has a particular role with providing those services in a small town. So to me, the design reflects the services that the town needs and is not providing adequately at this point in time. It seems like to me the library, as much or more than any other service or part of the town and its building, has a particular role with the stewardship of the past and the future focus looking forward, because of the changing nature, particularly of the way we store and retrieve information. We're changing as we move forward. Obviously, the impact of technology on that. So while we're building the building and designing it in 2010, we need to both reflect in the design, it seems like to me, the fact that the stewardship of the past, the preservation of the history, in the most simple-minded way, the books of the past, if you would, as opposed to the technology of the future, those things need to be balanced as we move forward in town. So I think the architectural firm attempted to do that. It's a matter of degree, I think, in terms of how well they achieved that. And it's my reaction to it is that they fell too much on the side of looking to the future with a future focus and making too much of a statement about where we're going without balancing that. So with the selection of materials, and I have a concern that it will in fact look like a building that was built at a moment in time and doesn't capture the relationship to the past as much. So it erred on the side of the future as opposed to balancing those two. That's a general conceptual observation about it. The second is I do have a concern about if there are significant needs that are out in the future and we've essentially landlocked ourselves without a solution to that, so that we run the risk of repeating history where we have apparent needs now that we've been slow to respond to for a whole series of reasonable reasons. We may, if we're significantly undersizing the library to real needs, but we have any sense of how we might respond to that in the future, that we may end up repeating history with no, at least much thought given to how we would expand in the future.
Thank you. Commissioner Jensen?
I would be prepared to make a motion if anyone's interested in that, but if they're not, Commissioner Bourgeois at least is nodding his head. Is anyone interested in making a motion as opposed to making a comment?
Well, obviously,
I'll make a comment if that's what's required, but
it's not required. You're free to make a motion if you want to. I will tell you that some of us, and I'm certainly included in that, will in any event have some comments. I thought it might be easier if we got all the comments on the table before the motion, but you're free to do as you usually do.
I don't know what I usually do.
You're always a very...
I was just thinking that you could always make a comment whether there's a motion on the table or not, is sort of what I was thinking.
I'm saying
but
do as you please.
I will do as instructed. The only comment I would make is that I think architectural design is very subjective. We have a lot of standards that we follow in the town. The Civic Center is a boxy, in 1967, modern construction. I personally very much like the design. I like the materials. I like the way it looks. That's one person's opinion. I think it fits in. I think it's nice that we're not doing a Craftsman or a California Mission revival, and it's refreshing, although I think some people say, like, oh, that doesn't look like Los Gatos. Well, actually it does. So, and it fits with this. So that's just one person's opinion. And I'd be prepared to make a motion, but I will wait my turn.
Thank you. Commissioner Sack.
With regards to design and materials, I guess, as everyone else has said, it's a personal and it's very subjective. My own opinion is I do like the design. I can understand the concerns regarding materials. The time that I've spent here, specifically the 1 year I've been on historic preservation, so much was placed on using real materials instead of faux. And so I do understand and empathize with the comments of using real stone versus the tile veneer, considering that we place that emphasis with so many of our applicants that are residential. It seems kind of odd that we're ourselves not following that, but understanding also the maintenance of this building and the financial aspect, I guess I'm glad it's the council that's making that decision, which is going to be more important, when the time comes for them to make that. As for the focusing now on the macro issue, I do think that it meets the land use, it meets the general criteria that we need for our library. It meets the needs, it meets the actual space considerations, the square footage. The EIR certainly I feel is ready to be certified, as well as all the materials supporting that. So really, I really don't have much more to add, and if a motion were to be made, I'd certainly support this application moving forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Telesfor?
Thank you. Anyway, where shall I start? I think so much has been said, and I can stand on both sides of this very well. I think when you're creating a significant building in Los Gatos, one that we hope will take its place among the current buildings, and become the resource that we hope. We want to make it beautiful, and we want to make it well, and we want to make it to last. And so that's why we're up here looking at materials. It's not just for us, but we want it to take its place graciously among the family of buildings that are already here. And whether they were built in, 1910 or 1960 or 1970, this one will be built in 2010-12. So how do we make them all fit? And I think that so many, my fellow commissioners have already expressed a lot of what I think. But I do think that the council directed the building not to mimic what's presently here, but to be compatible. And I would agree with that direction. But then compatibility can be measured in many ways. architecture aside. It can be measured with scale, proportion, compatibility in materials, and then also in terms of color. And so I can only make comments tonight about the compatibility, or I will choose to make comments about the compatibility of materials, since we are past the stage of any structural or form integration changes. Although I will say that I am a little bit troubled with the teen bump out appendage. I do think that could have been much better or more, how do I say it, more graciously or eloquently integrated. I think the idea was kind of a cool idea for the teens, but on the other hand, when you're looking at that from the view I saw, and you're standing at the Civic Center hub and you're looking down, that appendage just hangs there. I'm sorry that it somehow can't be more integrated or supported with an architectural detail, but that's my feeling, and I'm not an architect. I love the fact that there's a lot of glass, and that definitely is a compatible material with what's already there. So that's really going in the right direction. I do, though, have trouble with the selection of the tile. I think it's thin. I think I'm not sure how it's going to be applied. The thing about the brick, and I'm not saying that this building should have brick, although it could have features of brick. The thing about brick is that it does shadowing, and although the tile here is going to give somewhat a feeling of some variation in color, we'll never get that depth of shadow that really softens a building that is so square. And I'm not against square buildings. But let's see, what else did I want to say? I think with that, if I could offer any suggestion at all, if there was some way we could possibly, whether incorporate brick as architectural detail. It could be as a sitting wall, and I noticed that there are sitting walls in front of the courtyard. And if the brick somehow could be interpreted in that, it would somehow connect us in this family of buildings. So that would be my comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you. I share the sentiments of Commissioner Sayoc and Commissioner Jensen. I'm a fan of this design, and I understand that no design is going to make everyone happy. We heard a lot of these similar comments from the public on the new police building, and I think that turned out quite nice in my opinion. This has been a long process. There have been numerous public meetings. We've had lots of opportunity for input on the design, and this has kind of been the way it's been going all along. And so I think at this point to recommend any significant changes is not appropriate. I have a little trouble with trying to make judgments on terms like warm and welcoming and inviting. Those are extremely subjective to me. What's inviting to one person is not to another. So I'm looking at this in the terms of context and materials and massing. And in all those respects, I think the architects did a good job of following the direction of the council and fitting this into the Civic Center. The one concern I do have about the design is that east facade, which faces a residential street and is going to be very visible from cars coming down that street. That's the one aspect of the design that I'm not a particular fan of. But other than that, I'm extremely supportive of the project, and I think it was well done.
Let me say this. To the extent that anyone thinks that anybody on this planning commission in any way wants to slow this process down, I think you may now know that's not the case. Personally, I'm a big supporter of this library, and I'm looking forward to the new library. That being said, however, we are supposed to express an opinion on things like design. I think it's an unfortunate time to have that comment now. Commissioner Bourgeois says essentially it's too late. I think he's right. But for whatever it's worth, I think we should express our opinions, and I would agree with Commissioner Bourgeois that exposure is unnecessarily harsh and doesn't fit with the neighborhood. Now, that's not to say to slow the process down. Also, I don't particularly feel for any responsibility for this design. While it's been suggested that this came before us, I'm getting old, it's probably my memory, but I don't recall being asked anything really for the design. Again, I say that with humility because maybe I just missed it. We were told, I've been told since March that we would have some input in the design. I don't think that's the case, and I think tonight is a good example of that. But I don't think the horse is totally out of the barn, whatever gets out of barns, in that something could be done. I think that exposure that Commissioner Bourgeois talked about, I'd sure like to see something happen with that. If you look at this building across the lawn, which I asked to show again, something could be done to soften that. Mr. Peterson's comments, a lot of them could still be addressed, I think. I have not tried to express any concerns about the interior of the building, but the comments that were made sounded reasonable to me. But I can say that the outside, the letter from Wade Hover says it's essentially an industrial building, and unfortunately, I agree with that. That is not to say I'm against the library. It's not against the size. I mean, I like a bigger library. I'm in favor of the library. I'm not for slowing it down. But I do not want to be remembered as having been in favor of this design. For whatever that's worth, and it's probably worth nothing. So I don't have to, Commissioner Erickson said it beautifully, I thought. But I would just join with him. And I don't believe that one has to give up beauty and grace to get more square footage. If that was the message or the history of architecture, we don't need architects. So I'm very disappointed that people think we must trade off, and not everybody, some people think this is a beautiful building. But those that I've heard basically saying, well, we needed that. I don't ever think you have to give up grace and beauty to build a building. And if you do, it ought not to be the government doing it. And so I would reject that. Now, if people like this design, that's good. That's what they should. And I don't attack anybody for that. But just for the record, I think at least the front facade and the exposure around the corner could be softened. I think the comment about the junction of the glass is a fairly straightforward and simple comment. It should be able to be addressed. I'm not really big on aluminum windows. It was popular in the 50s. So there are those kinds of things, so something could be done. On the other hand, this will be before the town council on Monday. So, so I think we're now ready for the motion that we've all had an opportunity to talk, so let's go ahead and have our motion. Commissioner Jensen, I think you wanted to make a motion?
I will make a motion to recommend this project to the town council. As I understand it from listening to Mr. Korb, the Planning Commission will separately reconsider or consider for the first time architecture and site. When and if the plan development is?
Actually, no. The current council policy would call for the subsequent architecture and site to go to DRC.
Okay. And then if it's appealed, it would come to us.
Correct.
But our comments on architecture and site are all on the record.
Okay.
So my motion would be to find that the proposed project is internally consistent with the existing goals and policy of the general plan and its corresponding elements, and those are detailed in pages 8 and 9 of the staff report. Certain goals and elements, policies of the general plan are set forth there, and I would incorporate those into this motion. That the proposed zone change or changes, as I understand it, there's several zone changes that go to making this one zone under the plan development, are internally consistent with the general plan and its elements. I would find that as required by section 29.10.09030 close paren, the town code for the demolition of the single-family residences that are proposed for demolition, clearly not to include 17 Fiesta Way, can be made that the town's housing stock will not be materially affected. We've heard that the residences are being currently used for staff offices and or were rented but are not currently being rented. The existing structures have no architectural or historic significance. Those have been reviewed by the Historic Preservation Committee, which has found that they do not. The property owner, which is the town of Los Gatos, clearly does not desire to maintain the structures as they exist. And the economic utility of two of the houses, which are listed here, 56 and 108 Villa Avenue, is poor, and the proposed design cannot be accomplished without removal of the structures. And finally, that the project is consistent with the town's general plan as required by Section 4B of the redevelopment plan for the Central Los Gatos redevelopment project. And then I would add, I don't know if it's appropriate now, but that as part of my motion, that we would ask the town council to include preservation of the mosaics in recycling materials, in carefully considering the high school schedule for AM and PM truck restriction. I'm not going to do that. If somebody wants to do that, they can. And I think those are the only specific things that were included that we wanted to add. So that would be my motion.
Is there a second? There's a second. Commissioner Bourgeois, any discussion? Commissioner Sack, you were saying something that I could not hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking whether she wanted to include comments from the east elevation that were mentioned while we were doing our discussion.
Okay. No further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So it is, with Mr. Machichi being excused, unanimous, except for Mr. Machichi.
And this PD application will be, which is recommended for approval by the commission, will be forwarded to the council, which has already scheduled a hearing for this coming Monday, January 11, 2010. Be there or be square.
So we're finished with that, right? You are done. All right. Now, since this was Mr. Korb's last comment, I think we should go of record. This, I understand, is your last meeting?
My last planning commission meeting.
Last planning commission meeting. Well, I think it is fair to say that all of us have appreciated your sage advice and your patience with us, and we wish you a great future with the county. And so I think we want to thank you. All right. Is there anything from staff at this point?
We have no other reports, thank you.
Okay. Anything from the commission? I think we can be adjourned. Thank you all.
And I want to thank you all.